Welcome to hell, it's your boy Lanky, aka Lank God, aka FKI Carly, and today I'll show you how I use Maschine with Ableton Live. So we've got Ableton pulled up, and I'm using kind of a wacky theme, so I'll change it real quick. It's more of a standard theme. So we're looking at my default template, and as we can see, I've got a Maschine set up within it, so I'll just go over what I've got going there. So let's say we've got a MIDI track on here, but you want to use your Maschine to control it. First things first, make sure your Machine's on, and then you'll just want to make a second MIDI track, and you can add a new MIDI track with Control-Shift-T, and then you'll insert the Maschine plugin on there, and that comes with Maschine. When you install Maschine, the plugin should install as well. And as you can see, it looks exactly like the Maschine software itself. And if we tap on these pads, you can see that I'm selecting different sounds, but that's not really what you want. So you can set up multiple presets basically for the different groups. So what I prefer to do is to put my first group into keyboard mode and leave it chromatic, and then I go down 2 octaves so that it's from C1 up. Chromatic means that it plays every note in a row, and this is my drum rack setup. The drum rack is viewed chromatically. It's just a series of samples that occupy each individual note on a keyboard basically, and so to get them to line up, I default to C1. Now you'll want to jump over to your inputs and your outputs here, go over to MIDI, the destination is none, select host, and I actually recommend that you just pick all of these, change it to host, and then change it to 2 and then back to 1, just to make sure every sound slot is outputting to the host. That way if you accidentally pick the wrong one, you'll still be sending MIDI to Ableton. Then what I do is I create a second group, and again, select all, change it to host, go to 2 and then back to 1. Now on the second one, I'll also be in keyboard mode, but because this one's for controlling an instrument rather than a drum rack, I'll actually set a scale. So I make stuff that's usually minor, so I'll set it to minor, go up to C3 so that it starts at C3 minor, and that way you can adjust your scale as you normally would using your Maschine controller, and it will actually send that information as MIDI over to whatever you're controlling in Ableton. Now you do have to set your MIDI track that you want to control to receive MIDI information from the Maschine. So if we look over on the right here, we leave it on all ends, it doesn't actually do anything. You want to go to Maschine 2, or in this case, for your template, I recommend renaming it just to Maschine or something easy for you to recognize. But you'll want to make sure you have the track with your Maschine selected, and then below that, select Maschine 2. Now it'll receive MIDI information. So I'll show you a quick example. We throw drum rack on here. If I go to my first group, where it's C1 chromatic, as I play it, activates the drum rack in the corner here, and you can see it's C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G. When it's every note and the sharps in between, that's a chromatic scale. So that's why you use the chromatic. And I typically, I leave a drum rack in here and I have it set to this specific position, because obviously if you go up, it's not going to change what you're playing on your Maschine. You'd have to actually go up a couple octaves. But they don't line up perfectly. So when you start on C1, it matches exactly. If you like it up here or something, then you could set it so that you're at G sharp 3 chromatic, and that way you can still hit these as they're seen here, and it'll line up with the pads on your Maschine. I'm a little lazier than that. And so on my default, I've got a drum rack, and then I've also got an audio track and a MIDI track. And the audio is just so I can drop a loop in, and MIDI is so I can play an instrument. So on the MIDI track as well, you want to set it to Maschine 2. That way when you hit record, it'll send input, and then you can jump over to, keyboard mode so that you can, play a scale. As you can see, it's skipping some of those. So once you've got your setup the way that you like it, to where you've got your Maschine presets that you use commonly, along with your typical Ableton needs, I just recommend you save a template. Super easy. The shortcut to go to your settings is Control, use that one a lot, so you might as well learn it. And then if you go to File folder, you can click save current set as default, and then when you load a new Ableton set, it'll load whatever your setup is, including your settings for how you have your machine set up and where it's sending MIDI information. Now, there are a couple advantages to this. For one, you can use like the note repeat feature on your machine. If you got the full version of the Mark III, you can use the mod slider that you use for pitch modulation and performing notes. You can't humanize the way that you can in the machine software using this method, unfortunately. And another drawback is if you play some MIDI, the capture MIDI button doesn't work because you're not recording any MIDI. The MIDI is going to machine, and machine's not set to record. So unfortunately, you can't do that MIDI capture feature. But I kind of think the advantages outweigh the setbacks when you already own a machine. Trying to set it up just using MIDI controls is kind of a pain in the ass, and you lose a lot of the good functionality. You know, with Maschine, they've got built-in arpeggiation, you can do chords automatically, you can select scales and have it stick to those for you. All that stuff is really convenient, and especially makes production easier for like beginners and stuff. So not having access to it is pretty inconvenient, especially after you've already had access to it. So I definitely recommend that you use this method to set up Maschine with Ableton if you're planning on jumping from the Maschine software to the Ableton software. So that's all for this week. Pretty quick one, pretty simple. I was dealing with some technical difficulties, so I thought I'd just do this real quick. As always, throw me a like because I told you to. Subscribe so that I can hit 100 subscribers so I can put Lank God in my URL. And go check out the Where is Alex Pin podcast on SoundCloud. It's my homeboy. He's black, he's gay, he just kind of came out for real, and he's like talking to his family about kind of reconciling with some homophobic stuff they said in the past, talking to them how they feel about having a gay son, talk about how they feel about having a black son, a black and gay son. It's really cool, it's really good. The second episode's super funny. He's talking to his mom, they got a great chemistry, and you know, even though the subject matter is really serious, it's still a good time. So I'll link that in the description as well. I really want that to do some numbers. I'm really proud of my homie. So yeah, leave a comment if you need any help with anything specifically. I got some ideas for what I'm gonna do moving forward, but obviously if someone suggests something better, I'd love to tackle that first. So that's all for now. See you next time.
Got a condo with a cleaner. She must be Madonna, start with Prima. With the drama, she a diva. I got buku pounds of reefer. Dope in my 2-liter. I see snitches in the bushes. I should back it up to beepers.